Welcome and thanks for joining us today. We're here for an OhioX event. It's a 2022 legislative briefing, and we're joined today by Spencer Gross and Mike Dittoe, both partners at Highbridge Consulting in downtown Columbus. And Spencer also leads and heads up OhioX's public policy efforts. So we're excited to welcome them today and have them join us for this conversation to give us some insight. It's an exciting and busy time, to say the least, at the Statehouse in Washington, D.C., with new mayors also across the state. And there's a ton of incredible kind of collaborations and tech movements that are out there. And it's just an exciting time for tech in Ohio. But there's definitely a public policy component to it, with legislation and elections and just so much at stake this year. And so we thought it would be a great time to welcome these two experts in the public policy realm to join us today and give this briefing to the OhioX community and our members. And so we're grateful and appreciative that you are here. So I'll turn it over to Spencer in just a second, but what we'll do today is Spencer and Mike will run through their presentation, give us this briefing, and then we'll open it up to some questions that we've solicited a few beforehand. And then we'd also welcome you at any time, either put it in the chat, for anyone to see, or you can DM it directly to the three of us, myself, Spencer, or Mike. We'd be happy to work it in. And so at this point, I want to turn it over to Spencer. Spencer, thanks so much for joining us today. Thanks for you and Mike putting this together. Thanks for all you're doing for OhioX. And I'm looking forward to learning more about what's happening in the legislature today.
Well, thank you, Chris. As Chris mentioned, my name is Spencer Gross. I am a partner at Highbridge Consulting. Additionally, serve as the VP of Public Policy for OhioX. A little bit about my background: worked in the state legislature, worked in the executive branch, and have worked sort of in and out of the campaign space and government arena for about 10 years now. I'm joined by my partner, Mike Dittoe. Mike, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Spencer. I appreciate it. And thanks again, Chris, for having us on today. We're glad to do this. My name is Mike Dittoe, also one of the partners at Highbridge Consulting. And prior to joining Highbridge in 2018, I served as a staff member in the Ohio House of Representatives for about 15 years. Started there doing some legislative aid work and some policy work. Later went on and spent my last 7 years there as the communications director and later the Ohio House Chief of Staff. At Highbridge, we engage in a lot of political and public policy initiatives, do some public affairs work too, and we're excited about the partnership with OhioX. So again, thanks for having us today.
Great. So thought it would be nice to start a little bit for those of you who are new to OhioX, just a little bit about who we are. So OhioX is really on a mission to build Ohio into a tech hub. Our members include Fortune 500 companies, startups, tech-focused businesses, research institutions, universities, and so on and so forth. Chris has done an amazing job building OhioX and the members who participate as well. Our efforts really are centered around connecting, promoting, and advocating for Ohio's tech and innovation economy. And so with that, we have sort of kind of four pillars that make up our public policy initiatives. And that is one, to create Ohio as a leading tech and innovation hub. We're focused on technology-focused job creation. We center efforts around developing, retaining, and attracting technology talent to Ohio. And we want to advocate for policies that empower innovators and entrepreneurs with the resources and tools that they need to succeed in this space in Ohio. So to break some of that down just a little bit more, in creating Ohio as a leading tech and innovation hub, that looks at supporting growth-focused regulatory policies, welcoming these emerging technologies to our state, supporting policies that promote internet access and adoption for all Ohioans. We'll get into that a little bit here in the next couple of slides, and securing federal research dollars for Ohio institutions, bringing some of that money back to the state. We're focused on tech-focused job creation, so supporting tax, environments that make it easy to do business and grow in Ohio. Targeted economic incentives for new and existing tech-focused businesses, and supporting efforts to increase tech commercialization and launch new startups right here in Ohio. developing, retaining, and attracting tech talent in Ohio. So, the pandemic and even before that, we saw a lot of folks migrate from the coasts to the middle of the United States, and Ohio did a really great job in attracting a lot of those folks. We want to keep that momentum going, and that looks at supporting education curriculum that prioritizes STEM, supporting policies that close skill gaps, connecting talent with businesses. So, think tech cred and other programs like that, and supporting policies that foster a culture of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And lastly, empowering innovators and supplying them with the resources that they need to succeed. Policies that incentivize entrepreneurship. We want businesses to get started and grow here in Ohio. Support innovative, focused investments at Ohio's universities. We have tremendous university system here in Ohio. And when folks graduate from our university system, we want to keep them here. And support policies and efforts that increase capital investment here in our state. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Mike for a few kind of large developments that have happened over the course of the year. The first one will come as no surprise to a lot of you, but worth mentioning.
Thanks, Spencer. As I'm sure many or all of you have heard, one of the biggest developments in the economic development realm for the state of Ohio over the last year, particularly even in the last month, has been the acquisition of an Intel chip manufacturing facility over in Licking County. This Central Ohio-based company now is going to do really some pretty tremendous things in terms of economic development and job growth in this state. If you look at what we've got here on the slide, it's pretty remarkable. Intel is making a $20 billion initial investment. It's going to be $100 billion over 10 years. And look at all the jobs that'll be coming here between construction and actual salary jobs at Intel. You're looking at north of 10,000 jobs. Construction is expected to start sometime this year, and production at the facility will be underway by 2025. When they did the Intel announcement, practically every legislator and member of our congressional delegation was there in attendance. And kudos to Governor Mike DeWine and his administration and the legislature who made this happen. Without them and some financing opportunities and some legislative initiatives, they really did bring this company to Ohio in a very, very creative and very, very successful way. In order to have something like this, and I have some friends in Licking County who talk about this often, they really got to bring in a skilled workforce, but there's a skilled workforce that's already there in Licking County and throughout Central Ohio. Now they will have a place to go, a place to work, and we're going to see Ohio continue to be on the forefront in the tech innovation sector, probably worldwide. That leads into another part that I think is very worth talking about, and that is Jobs Ohio and their innovation districts. That's one of the things that has been pretty key over the last couple of years. If you recall, Jobs Ohio was started in 2011 under Governor John Kasich and the members of the Ohio General Assembly. It was House Bill 1. It was sort of on the forefront of everyone's mind right after the recession to help bring jobs back to Ohio and really change the way that we do business here. Over the last 10 years, Jobs Ohio has been a tremendous success in the state. Now we see the fruits of their labor over the last 10 years through the Intel facility coming to Licking County, but also through something pretty creative in these innovation districts. In the three major cities in Ohio, Cleveland, Columbus, and Cincinnati, these innovation districts have created sort of this close-knit ecosystem with this idea of bringing networking assets, physical locations, economic development, bringing all of that together into sort of a small geographic region and commercializing new ideas throughout these districts. When you're talking about academic research, STEM talent, and employment opportunities for the people in these three communities, these innovation districts are really going to continue to be on the forefront of tech innovation in the state of Ohio. And as you see there in that last bullet point, the overall mission of the innovation district is to ensure that Ohio is solidly competitive by nurturing the type of communities that attract top talent. Obviously, that's happening in Intel and through the other jobs and other economic opportunities that are coming forth from Governor DeWine's administration. Jobs Ohio deserves tremendous credit for what they have done over the last 10 years. They have a tremendous team over there, great leadership, and that's what's really spurring this economic growth in this state. Spencer, I'll kick it back over to you for a little bit of an overview about what's happening in the General Assembly and our House and Senate right now. They're keeping pretty busy, no doubt.
Indeed, they are. And so I'll go through a series of bills here, really 30,000 foot view of some of these bills, and just want to, put an offer out there that if there are any further questions on some of these things, happy to answer any questions at the end, or, give you my contact information at the end here. So one of the bills that's been on the forefront of folks' minds in the tech and business arena is House Bill 376 related to data privacy. This is a bill from Representative Rick Carfagna and Thomas Hall to provide consumers with, certain rights surrounding their data. As you can see there from the bullet points, a right to know what personal data a business collects, right to receive that data, right to request that any incorrect data be corrected, personal data pertaining to a consumer be deleted upon request, and request for personal data to not be sold. The bill applies to businesses that conduct business in Ohio and whose services, target consumers in Ohio, meet the following criteria there. I won't read all of them to you, as this will be available for you afterward. One of the things that's, kind of a larger point that separates this bill from, say, a California version is that the Attorney General is the sole entity authorized to enforce the requirements of the bill, similar to Virginia, in that we don't allow for a private right of action in this bill. The bill's cleared committee and is now awaiting a vote on the House floor. Senate Bill 249, which would create a fintech sandbox. Senator Steve Wilson, who is from the financial institutions industry, this bill would create a regulatory sandbox for fintech businesses to test and experiment with different things. This is a very highly regulated industry with 36 regulators. A lot of startups spend millions of dollars just on regulatory compliance alone. So this would allow them a venue sort of to test things and to try new products in a sort of regulatory framework that it makes it a little bit easier for them to experiment. This actually just passed the Senate yesterday, so it will make its way over to the House now. House Bill 177, which deals with public entities utilizing blockchain technology. This is by Rick Carfagna and Mark Fraser. This bill is a fairly simple, clean bill. It allows governmental entities to use blockchain technology. You may wonder why legislative action was necessary for the utilization of that technology, and really that's because a lot of governments are just creatures of statute and will only kind of explicitly do things that they're allowed to do. So this bill has actually been signed into law by the governor and is active right now. Broadband expansion. This is a rather large policy piece that over the past couple of years has been really on the forefront of the whole state's mind in the business and tech communities. Rick Carfagna and Brian Stewart introduced House Bill 2 to create a grant authority within what is now the Department of Development to allow for some startup funds for grants to provide money to ISPs to assist them in reaching unserved and kind of underserved areas of the state. This was a real back and forth kind of fight in the legislature. The initial kind of startup costs that were put forth by House Bill 2 was about $20 million. There was an additional $250 million that was allocated in the state operating budget, both of which have been signed into law by the governor. Grant applications are currently being considered right now by Broadband Ohio and sort of the Development Authority. There have been 200 plus applications totaling $2.6 billion. So a lot of money being requested and less to go around. And if you're interested in reading through all those applications, I put a link down there at the bottom. If you're very, very bored one day and want to go through 12,600 pages of those applications, be my guest. House Bill 441, dealing with kind of social media tech censorship, sort of a hot button issue kind of in the political space right now, introduced by Representative Scott Wiggum and Al Catrona, would prohibit a social media platform from censoring expression of a user in Ohio. This bill is currently in committee, and that's kind of where it's at right now. House Bill 585, dealing with a number of things, namely decentralized autonomous organizations, or DAOs. This is introduced by Rep. Mark Frazier and Tom Young, actually just this week, I think yesterday. As you can see, the bullet points there: create a special purpose depository institution charter, provide for the formation and management of DAO LLCs. Currently, Wyoming is the only state that allows for the formation of DAO LLCs, so Ohio could really be on the forefront of this. Create a atmosphere in Ohio that is very friendly to this kind of new LLC structure, and make it a really attractive place to do that. It amends the Uniform Commercial Code to address classification of and perfection of security interest in digital assets, as many of us are kind of interested in. Again, the bill was just introduced this week, so I think there's going to be a lot of folks that have some things to say on this, and I was just talking to Representative Frazier about that this morning, and how excited he is for Ohio to be on the forefront of this. This is a wordy one, but it's a very large bill, House Bill 230, dealing with the state's IT system, introduced by Sharon Ray and Thomas Hall. I am not going to read all of this, but a really high level kind of overview is that it's a bill that really wants to take a really holistic view of the state's IT system. One of the sponsors jokes during their testimony that many of the state's IT systems are older than the bill sponsors themselves. And so this bill is sort of tasking the state CIO and other agencies to take a look at their systems and how they can be upgraded. Quick overview of the EV space in Ohio. So Ohio is set to receive more than $20 million in federal funding this year through the Infrastructure Investments and Jobs Act, the federal bill that all of us are aware of. Ohio is in line to receive more than $140 million in EV charging station funding over the next 5 years. Almost 21 million of that coming in one single year. So a really kind of game-changing landscape type money that we're talking about here. Looking at some electric vehicle space, Foxconn, the company that makes our iPhones and some other products, announced that they were buying the Lordstown Motors plant in Lordstown, Ohio. Lordstown is going to manufacture their Endurance all electric pickup truck still in Lordstown, and a number of other EV manufacturers have announced that they're going to either look at or have announced that they are going to manufacture also at that plant. Fisker being one of them, they're going to manufacture the Pear at Lordstown as well. So really exciting time for the Voltage Valley, as it's become known. Senator Michael Ruley has also announced an EV bill that is forthcoming that would provide $15 million in grant funding to incentivize the transition to EV production facilities, and then $10 million in kind of workforce initiatives to help sort of retrain some of the workforce in EV specific manufacturing. We have a really great manufacturing base here in Ohio, and we're very well positioned to make Ohio one of the top places in the world for EV manufacturing. And so now I'll turn it back over to Mike for some kind of general updates on redistricting and the 2022 elections. Yeah, a lot of thoughts there.
We could do a whole webinar on just that, I think, Spencer, but we'll save it to our allotted time. And just to dovetail real quick off of what you said, you're absolutely right. Ohio really is on the forefront with so much that's going on. And, I mentioned Jobs Ohio and the great work that they're doing earlier. I'd be remiss too if I didn't, give some shout outs to not only the legislature and the governor's office, but the Department of Higher Education, the Department of Development. They're all very much tied into exactly what's going on in Ohio, and it's kudos to them for helping bring about this massive change. It's really going to continue to put Ohio on the map. And speaking of maps, redistricting, the flavor of the day right now, as you probably have seen, there is a little bit of a battle going on right now between the state legislature and the Ohio Supreme Court. So not to bore you too much with this topic, but to go back a little bit, back in 2015, voters approved of a constitutional amendment to reform the way that we redraw the state General Assembly lines, and then ushered in a new process through a voter-approved constitutional amendment back in 2018 to do a similar but not identical process for congressional redistricting. Basically, the process is set up currently to where for state legislative maps, the Ohio Redistricting Commission has the authority to draw a map. And the Redistricting Commission is made up of the auditor, the Secretary of State, the governor, and 4 members of the legislature, 2 Republicans, 2 Democrats. And the way the process is set up in the Constitution right now, if a majority of one party, or if there are no minority votes for the state legislative map, in this case, if neither of the 2 Democrats on the commission voted for the legislative map, it's only in effect for 4 years. If a unanimous vote or a bipartisan vote were to have occurred, the map would be in place for 10 years. As you may have seen, the first version of the General Assembly map, which outlines all of the Ohio House and Senate districts, was challenged in the courts, and by a very narrow 4-3 decision, the Ohio Supreme Court rejected the first map. The Redistricting Commission went back to the drawing board to comply with the court's order, and they drew a second map. That map, unfortunately, too, was rejected by the Ohio Supreme Court. The interesting thing about the rejection of the second map, though, and what has caused a little bit of chaos here in the whole state of Ohio, is that the court's ruling on the second map took quite a while to come back, and it didn't come out that the map was invalidated until after the filing deadline for candidates to run for the House and the Senate. So while candidates have already filed, the map has been ruled unconstitutional. So just last week, led by the Ohio Redistricting Commission again, they passed a third and hopefully final map that is currently under review by the Ohio Supreme Court. As of the date of us sitting here for this webinar, they have not ruled on that yet, but the maps in front of you on the screen here are at least the most latest iteration of the districts for the Ohio House and the Ohio Senate. It is a very different map from the first 2 iterations. I believe if you read some of the articles in the paper today, you will find some great comments from Ohio Senate President Matt Huffman and Speaker Bob Cupp, who both supported the map, that they believe this and all the other maps are met the constitutional requirements, and it will be very difficult for the court to rule otherwise, particularly on this third map. Candidates have still filed, and they are still running for their offices, and we'll see how that all plays out here in the weeks ahead. As you may know, today's March 3rd. The primary is May 3rd, just 2 months away. So early voting in this state starts in about a month. So that's coming up very, very quickly. That was all the state General Assembly maps. When you talk about the congressional map, there's a little bit of scrutiny there too, certainly. The Ohio Redistricting Commission actually did not take action on a congressional map. So that map was passed by Republicans in the legislature, and it was also ruled unconstitutional by the Ohio Supreme Court. So a second map was just passed by the Redistricting Commission just a couple of days ago. It is also under court review. The filing deadline for congressional candidates is actually tomorrow. So there's still a little bit of cushion there, but it's widely anticipated, I would say, on all fronts, that the court will uphold or not make any ruling until after the filing deadline, will uphold this map. So we'll see what happens, but it has thrown things into a little bit of chaos. And the General Assembly passed a $9 million appropriation yesterday to help out Ohio's 88 county boards of elections get through this sort of condensed primary period, because it is a little bit of uncharted and unprecedented territory for us here in the state of Ohio. You might remember that in 2020, the primaries were delayed due to the start of the pandemic. The election was slated for, I believe, March 17th in 2020. And the day before the election, because COVID was really underway, it was surging, and we were really in the infant stages of the pandemic. The election date itself was not moved, but the ability to vote and cast an absentee ballot was extended until April 28th. We don't have that situation here, and I think there's a little voter fatigue on doing something like that again. So the legislature is keeping the primary. They're the only ones with the authority to set that date, and they're working very closely and in concert with our Secretary of State, Frank LaRose, to ensure a very smooth as possible primary on May 3rd. So stay tuned, a lot more to come, and we'll see what happens as people start filing for these congressional districts by tomorrow.
Great. And so maybe, Mike, if you want to run through really quickly, just, the elections that we have, all the statewide electeds, congressional,
Sure.
House, Senate, just a minute or two.
Yeah, absolutely. So it is, talking about the primary, once you get past that and we figure out who our nominees for the major parties will be, as Spencer said, we've got all of the General Assembly elections. So we've got all 99 members of the Ohio House of Representatives up for re-election, or certainly new candidates in many of those races. And we have about half of the members of the Ohio Senate. Those districts are up. This year, it is the odd numbered districts that will be up 1 through 33 for election here in 2022. In addition to that, and we have certainly the entire congressional delegation, and also at the federal level, we have what could be a very interesting race for the United States Senate. Right now, on the Democratic side, you have Ohio Congressman Tim Ryan, who's been in office for the last 20 years, who is running. And on the Republican side, there are many people running, several Republican candidates, former Treasurer Josh Mandel, Jane Timken, Mike Gibbons, Matt Dolan. The list goes on and on. It's a great list of candidates on both sides, and we're eager to see how that pans out. And finally, we have all of our statewide elected officials: Auditor, Secretary of State, Governor and Lieutenant Governor, Attorney General, and Treasurer. So stay tuned. We'll give you probably an election briefing later this year, but tune into your local news and your papers too, because there's a lot going on in these elections.
Well, that's it for us. Chris, not sure if you wanted to say any parting words, but again, Mike Dittoe, Spencer Gross, thank you for having us. Really appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Spencer. Thank you, Mike. Appreciate you both being here. Really great briefing and a lot of interesting pieces of legislation that certainly have big tech focuses, and hearing things from DAOs to tech talent to big economic development projects like Intel, and then of course the election. So I know a lot to come on that specifically, as Mike, you ran through redistricting and such. So thank you all. This will be recorded and also placed on the OhioX YouTube channel. So if you perhaps joined late or are using it on demand at a later time, feel free to go there. We have a whole host of content and resources for on-demand information, and would invite you to check it out. So thanks again, Spencer, Mike. Thank you so much for being here. Great briefing, and we appreciate your time. So have a great day, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.